Good morning, everybody from District 58 in South Carolina, USA. Welcome to this outstanding event.
It is called Paradigm Shift, Community to Corporate. It'll be presented by Pat Johnson, DTM, past international president.
In District 58, like all the other districts around the world, our mission is to build new clubs and support all clubs in achieving excellence. We empower individuals to become more effective communicators and leaders. I'd like to especially thank Robert Loon Jr. He's a DTM, a Distinguished Toastmaster, and our current Program Quality Director for working diligently to get Pat on board here to present. So thank you, Robert. Really appreciate you. I'm going to return control of this session to Robert so he can introduce Pat.
Thank you, Madam District Director. I want to start by saying I am very, very excited to be able to have this opportunity and present it to you. Pat is someone that delivers not only fantastic presentations, but they are jam-packed with good information that I believe that this district can definitely benefit from, and other districts, as you can see represented here. So she is a keynote speaker, an educator, author, a mentor, and orthological life coach, international president of Toastmasters International from 2010 to 2011, Region 10 advisor from 2020 until 2021, Region 2 advisor again from 2021 to 2022. She joined Toastmasters International in 1983 in rural northern Manitoba. I mispronounced that though. During her 39 years of continuous learning and membership in Toastmasters, she has spoken in a long list of countries around the world as a keynote speaker and an educator. She has served as District 21 Distinguished District Governor in 2001 through 2002. International Director from 2004 through 2006 from Region 1. International President of Toastmasters International in 2010 to 2011. Oh, wait, there's more. Now see, Learning Master Manager for the curriculum design of our Pathways program. District Host Chair for International Convention in Vancouver, Canada in 2017. She is also the recipient of Toastmasters President's Citation Award, which is awarded for outstanding leadership and communication on a global level. She has written and published Building and Sustaining Vibrant and Sustainable Toastmasters Programs and Corporations in 2018, and launched this book at the International Convention in Chicago, Illinois, United States. That same year, Region 10 Advisor for Europe and the UK in 2020 through 2021. Region 2 Advisor in Northern California, North America, 2021 to 2022. And she is currently the Vice President of Membership at her home club, Rise and Shine, number 331 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Fellow Toastmasters, please join me in giving a fantastically welcome to our guest of honor, Pat Johnson.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, and thank you to District 58 for inviting me to share some thoughts with you today on the corporate environment and Toastmasters. I'm going to invite you to play a game with me today, and I'm going to call it the Paradigm Shift. First of all, let's define what I'm going to refer to as a corporate program. A corporate program in Toastmasters, from my definition and what I'll use throughout this game today, is a Toastmasters program that is inside of a corporation, not just meeting in the building, but it's actually funded by the corporation or partially funded by it. They are involved in sending and supporting people in the Toastmasters program. There's accountability through their training program for the Toastmasters program, and they actually know that Toastmasters is in the building. They may also hold the Toastmasters program during work hours. Most of the corporate, so-called corporate clubs that I've visited around the world are, by my definition, a community club that meets in a corporate building. It's been created by somebody like Lee Holiday or Pat Johnson, who came along and said, hey, let's create a Toastmasters club. And the corporation said, you can have our meeting room. And so Lee and Pat got busy and we created a Toastmasters club. We invited all our friends and colleagues, and we continue to invite them, and we're responsible for maintaining that club. The corporation doesn't contribute. They don't hold us accountable in any way. I call that a community club that meets in a corporate environment. So just so that we have clear definition during this game today, the game of paradigm shift. So I'm going to ask you, when we play this game, is to forget everything you already know about Toastmasters. You have to pretend that when I say Toastmaster Club, you go, ooh, what's that? Or when I say table topics, you go, I've never heard of that before. When I say evaluation, you're going to go, oh, how does that work? So the challenge is to forget all that you know, because when I talk about what a different way of looking at Toastmasters in a corporate world, I find that we struggle because we already know what we think it looks like. Okay, so let's start the paradigm shift. And I want to start it by looking at, first of all, the mindset that we have when we start to work with a corporation. First of all, one of the great lessons that I've learned when working with a corporation is begin as you intend to continue. Begin as you intend to continue. You want to be very clear that this is a partnership, that Toastmasters is not going to do everything to make it happen, that we're going to work together, and that they're going to bring certain processes to the table, and Toastmasters is going to bring the curriculum. So you want to be really clear about this partnership. You want to ask for what you want, and then we'll take what we get and deal with that difference. So really get clear. I go in and I want time during work hours, 1 hour a week. I want them to pay. I want them to put it in their performance review plans so that there's accountability of what that employee is actually accomplishing in Toastmasters and how many meetings they're attending. And I also want their training department to have it in their training calendar and in their promotions of training. I want them to send people to Toastmasters through their training or HR department. We are not going to be chasing employees down the hallways in any corporations. Okay, so we want to begin as you intend to continue. We really need to deal with the corporation when we go in to make those initial calls. If somebody calls me and they say, oh, I work for ABC, I'm going, and who can I talk to in your human resources department or your training department? You can come with me if you have a good relationship with them, but we want to talk to the people who can integrate the Toastmasters curriculum into the corporation. Okay. One of the things that I find is really important when we're going in, first of all, about our mindset is that I really want to have my headspace in the same space as those people in that corporation. In other words, if I'm uncomfortable, or if you're uncomfortable talking about money or time or curriculum or training needs for their employees and meeting those, and what we want from them, don't be the person that goes. Send somebody who is very comfortable talking about this. We need to have our very best representative there, because basically the mindset, the paradigm shift here is that we are bringing curriculum to them. And we're going to sell them on curriculum with learning objectives, deliverables, and they are going to provide the process in which it is integrated into their workplace. So that's part of that paradigm shift. One of the things that, just to share a quick story, a number of years ago, one of our colleagues in Toastmasters went in to visit a corporation, and they were talking about money. And the corporation said, "Oh, how much is it going to cost for us to put it in-house?" And the colleague said, "About $100. They said about 100. And the corporation said, "Oh, we'll need to go back and have a discussion about that." And when we went back a couple of weeks later to check in, the corporation said, "Oh, we've got approval for the $100,000. Our colleague was talking about $100 per person. The corporation took 100 to mean 100,000. So don't underestimate the value of the Toastmasters program in the corporate world. Just as a paradigm shift, if you worry about asking them for $100 per person. One of the things I've also discovered in my experience is to be very particular about the words that we use when we are speaking to the corporate world. Watch that we don't use diminutive words. "Oh, we just need a little bit of time. It'll just be a little effort. It's not difficult." It sounds like a Mickey Mouse organization right away. Tell them that the people are going to get what they put into it. It's an experiential learning program. We're going to get together every week and practice, and people will develop based on how much effort they put into it. That this is one of the challenging skills for people to learn. Don't downplay or simplify the truth of the program. And don't be afraid to handle their objections. Any objections that I've heard from any corporate leaders or people that were interested in finding leadership training, particularly the experiential for both communication and leadership, they're not hard to answer. They want to know measurements, they want to know deliverables, they want to know transferable skills, they want to know costs, they want to know time, and we can address all of those quite proudly in the Toastmasters program, as well as 98 years of history of deliverables around the world. So don't be concerned about that. So let's talk about the paradigm shift in language. One of the first things that I learned when I joined Toastmasters in our speaking component was know your audience and adapt your language to your audience so they understand. If you're speaking jargon, if you're talking techno talk, stop it. They don't know what you're talking about. The same thing applies when you go to talk to a corporation or someone working in the corporate world. Do not talk Toastmasters jargon. It just goes flying by their ears and they they may even feel stupid, and they won't want to do business with you. We've got to get out of the jargon. We all know what we're saying when we say, oh, there were DTM and we're a PIP and a PID and a CL and a level 4 strategic manager, you know. They don't care. They're going, get out of my office, go away. I don't want this to happen to my employees. I want them to be able to walk into a meeting and be more efficient, not talk more jargon. So we have to really look at who our audience is. So given that we're in a corporation, let's play this game for a moment. And I'm going to ask you to put, some of you might know some of these answers already, but I'm going to ask you to write into the chat box the answer to my question. So we're in the corporate world and we're offering them a training program, an education program. What would you call it when you charge them money for that? What would be the word that you might use? And it wouldn't be dues. Investment, tuition, okay. Program enrollment, okay, great, good. All of those might work based on what they call it. But they, for the most part, do not call it dues. Dues in a lot of the corporate environments that I've been in mean what they pay to belong to their professional associations. And so we want to talk where we want the context to be, this is education. So we often, if we're going to university or college, we pay tuition. We might have a fee, an education fee, which would be relevant. So we have to look at what their context is. And my first go-to is tuition, because I think of going to university or college and we pay tuition. So that's good. Let's have another one here. We're not going to, absolutely not going to say the word pathways. So how are we going to refer to our materials? The word pathways is not going to come out of our, okay, curriculum. Thanks, Angela. You heard me almost say it. Education program, yes. Yes, okay. Yes, training materials, education curriculum, education program, all of that. Yes, great, good, good. And that's what we want to do. What if we, what can I say? What if we say, oh, we're going to hold more meetings? And the corporation goes, no, 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 no meetings. We have enough meetings. We're not paying money to have meetings. What's the term that you could use instead of calling the Toastmasters meetings, training sessions, workshops? Yes. Now we're talking their language, because they're going to have employee development sessions. Their demo meeting would be something else, Jessica, in my opinion, but classes, training sessions, workshops, yes. So you want to think and find out what they call the sessions. I often call them learning sessions, program sessions, something that reflects their environment. Meetings is a poisonous word in lots of environments, because, you know, years ago they wrote that book, Meetings, Bloody Meetings, and they were going, who wants more meetings? And so don't use the trigger words for them. Talk about learning sessions or program sessions, whatever it works well for you, and know that once you plant that with them, then you have to continue with it. It also translates when we talk about the people who are involved in it. Who are involved in these learning sessions or these education programs. Who are involved? They're not members, because members are actually the employees that are there in the corporation. So what do we call those people that are going to class? Yeah, participants, program participants, students, leaders might work in some corporations. The VPs might get a little sensitive of that and say, yeah, actually, they're not the leaders of this organization, we are. So again, you have to be sensitive to what's going on. Yeah. Okay. Virginia, thank you for your comment that you take attendance and send it to the training admin for credit for required training hours. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I highly recommend that we do. In fact, I feel it's mandatory so that we have sustainable Toastmasters programs in the workplace. So learners, participants, great. And that we want to have that language as well. And we have all the way up to and including the word speeches. What's a word you might do other than speeches? Because sometimes they'll say, we don't really do speeches in our corporation. I mean, speeches sounds like you're walking out on a stage somewhere, and yes, presentations is much more transferable to a lot of that professional environment. So it is a big difference when we start sounding like the corporation and we sound like we fit into their environment. So thank you for playing that part of the game. So examine your language. Evaluations, I talk about feedback. When people start going, oh, we have this DCP, ooh, bad jargon to start going on to, but talk about, oh, we have critical success factors or those KPIs. And we have those built into our program, which gets people to relax again because most of them relate to that. And you can say, do you call them success factors or KPIs in your environment? And explain that our curriculum is built on adult education principles. There's benchmarks articulated throughout, the recognition is there, and it's built on those adult education principles. Also, some HR departments and training and development departments are very impressed to hear that we have over 300 competencies that are built into our curriculum. So we took all the competencies that were in our original programs and compiled them and ensured that they were somewhere in the new curriculum. So that is also a credibility section for you if you're speaking to them and they're saying, well, what is Toastmasters anyway? Not-for-profit education organization. That's what we are. That's the only thing we're in business to do is education. I don't talk to them about anything else. I don't say, oh, we're all volunteers. No, it has no relevance here. They're in the workplace. They're going to training for their career, for their development. Volunteer word does not have to come past your lips. They're students and they're signing up and being held accountable. Absolutely. Great. Well, let's look at some of the things that I put on the table right away in talking with the corporation to ensure that that partnership is in place. Remember that the unique thing about the Toastmasters program is not so much the content, but it's our delivery method and how we actually have people move through the program. And so this is really important to articulate to a corporation at the very beginning. And why is that? Well, for our paradigm shift, we have to remember that what happens mostly in your environment at work when you go to a course, what happens? Just write in the box. Do you go for a day or an hour, or 2 days perhaps. Anybody want to share? All day? Oh, wow, Melissa gets an all-day course. Okay, 1 day. Okay. Sometimes 2 to 3 days, 2 to 4 hours, 7-day course. Wow, that is unusual in my experience in the corporate world. Angela's got 3 days. Yeah, so we go to sessions, 8 sessions. But it's very unusual to have a program, or almost unheard of, that you go to a program for 1 hour this week, and next week you go for another hour, and the week after that you go for another hour, and the week after that you go for another hour. Now, I have had supervisors call me after 1 year of having people in Toastmasters saying, "What is wrong with Jan? Is she never going to pass out of Toastmasters? Like, she's been I've been sending her to Toastmasters for a year. Like, when's graduation?" And I went, "Oh, there's no graduation in Toastmasters. You can quit supporting Jan going to Toastmasters if she's got the skills now that you wanted her to gain, or she's feeling comfortable with what she came for, but there's no graduation." So here's some things that I think are absolutely critical to let the corporation know, because of the paradigm shift here. It's a self-paced program. This is unusual for the corporate world. We don't usually get sent into a room and told to work through at our own pace. And if we're not done, to come back tomorrow and finish it up, or even next week to finish it up. Toastmasters, you can start where you are. There's no prerequisites necessarily. And we build as we go. We grow at our level of ability. So it's self-paced, very important. It's experiential learning. In other words, we come together every single week and practice for an hour. Some of the objections are, an hour every week? And I go, have you ever heard of a great pianist or musician or sports person that only practiced for a short section once a week? Less than 1 hour, because they're not going to speak the entire hour. They're going to listen, but they won't be speaking the entire hour. So we absolutely learn by doing, and we need to ensure that the corporation understands that. Gain adult education principles. We learn in a team environment, and this is one of the bonuses, that we learn to work together to make it happen. That the course materials are provided, the learning objectives are in place, so I don't have to worry about any of that. That the evaluation criteria is already provided. That there's local and international support for the program. This is unusual. Usually an instructor appears, runs through the curriculum for the day. We're done and dusted. We go put it on the shelf and never to be discussed again. But that's not what happens in Toastmasters. It's ongoing. There's no pass or fail. Again, another criteria to discuss and put up front with them, that there's no pass or fail. We get feedback, and then we try to implement that feedback to improve. Very important process to explain to them. And the leadership training is experiential as well. So we learn by taking on those leadership roles, getting feedback on that, and we progress through that team environment of being the team lead. And then we learn. It's not necessarily book learning, but that experiential, hands-on experience, which then changes the behavior, which is so important. Let's stop here and see if anybody has any questions or comments just before because we've gone a lot through some material here that's a lot of paradigm shift going on.
Pat, this is Lee Holiday.
Yes, Lee.
One of the comments I made, and I think it's very pertinent. You're making a lot of really good suggestions to use in the corporate world, but many of those suggestions are also could be better for community clubs as well.
Yeah, it depends on, again, it's who your audience is, right? It's knowing your audience. We have, for example, in my home club, we have young business people arrive. I talk to them about transferable skills right away because they're going back to their workplace and asking for subsidized funding to come to Toastmasters. So they need to take material back or the language back to their corporation or their government agency to get support. So yes, thanks, Lee, for that. Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, I want to talk about transferable skills. And then I want to go back and I'll talk a bit about some of the things that I talk to corporations about wanting and needing so that we can set up a good relationship in terms of support required from them and what we'll bring to the table. Transferable skills, and this is, I feel, critical at any time with any person that's looking at the Toastmasters program, whether they're a student in university or a brand new supervisor in a workplace or a midterm manager in a workplace, somebody who's retired, who's looking at maybe volunteering in a different way or giving back to their community, anybody that comes to Toastmasters. So some of the first things that I love to talk to the corporate world specifically is the communication process. I never use the word public speaking. Those two words never come out of my mouth, except to say in this session that I do not say them. I talk about communication skills. And this is what I think is really important, is that communication for me is listening first, thinking secondly, and then speaking third. When I joined Toastmasters, our tagline was for better listening, thinking, and speaking. And I took that to heart. I became a very good listener, and then I became a very good thinker, and then I got called on to speak. So I took up the speaking. So I find that in the corporate world, listening and thinking skills are almost impossible to find in the marketplace. And yet we need them. We need careful listening skills. We need good critical analytical skills, thinking skills. And think of the transferability in the workplace. Just for example, if you're applying for a promotion, and you've got to go through an interview process. I don't know about you, but I'm trained as a panel chairperson in the government environment where I worked. And the people that didn't succeed at interviewing for promotions or jobs within our corporation were because they didn't hear the question or they didn't answer the question. They just missed it. They weren't good listeners. They didn't clarify the question if they didn't understand it because they didn't listen carefully enough. And then they didn't address the question. We practice this where? Every week in table topics. And it transfers. You build confidence, you build self-esteem, you have that self-awareness that you can answer a tough question because you had one last week in table topics. And you knew how to think it through and respond to it. So very transferable and absolutely critical for those listening skills, thinking skills, and then that presentation skills. And I talk about more formal presentations that they might do for the corporation or even at conferences for the department, to the department head, it might be to a committee, all of those places you might do a more formal presentation, but also those interpersonal communication skills, which are the less, are more informal. I find that these are the ones that change the morale in the corporation. They bring teams together in the corporation, because now the jerk that always gives you a hard time when you go down to the finance department with your expense account becomes that person that you really enjoy their stories about their travel in Toastmasters, or you go, wow, that person has done so much to improve their abilities in Toastmasters, being shy, being introverted, they've just come out of a shell. So we change those relationships, the dynamics, the morale in the workplace through those interpersonal skills. And isn't it amazing if you're in the elevator that you can actually talk to your colleagues instead of pulling out your cell phone and pretending that you've got an urgent text that you have to get off, but you can talk to one another. I talk about meeting management because meeting management skills are very desirable in the workplace. Wow. When a Toastmaster starts to chair meetings in the workplace, I don't know about you, but I've discovered that the meetings start and end on time suddenly. People are told ahead of time when they're on the agenda that, oh, you have 5 minutes. Will that be enough? Oh, not enough? Okay, how about 10? And there's time discussed of what's going to happen on that agenda. And it's a great skill to build that meeting management, putting meetings together, chairing them, and we all enjoy the efficiency that happens in the workplace when we build meeting management skills. Accountability is one of those that is somewhat hidden, but it is something we learn in Toastmasters. And this is one of the things that I ask the corporation to partner with us in, that we have them through the employee development plans or their performance management plan, whatever they call it, with their supervisor, that they set a standard of what someone will achieve every 6 months in Toastmasters. So that if they're not achieving and they're not showing up, it's not all reflected on Toastmasters program. We go, well, Pat was only there for a third of the meetings and she didn't deliver any presentations through that 6 months. And she only held 2 roles during any of the sessions. How could Pat have got better when she wasn't practicing during the practice sessions? So really important to have that accountability, and we teach it. In my home club, and I love this process, when we are scheduled to do a responsibility during the meeting, and we're unable to fulfill that role, we are required through accountability to replace ourselves in the agenda. I have to tell you, if you're feeling slack and you just don't want to show up, it's often harder to find a replacement than to just do it yourself. And it teaches accountability. I love that. And I like to see it in place. It's one of my suggestions. We learn organizational skills because we're always organizing, whether it's we're having a special event in like a contest in our club, or we're getting together to discuss our success plan for the year, to do our strategic planning, which is another transferable skill. The fact that we actually do some strategic planning. We think about what are our goals for the year? How are we actually going to manage those? And so we set them. It may be that Maureen is on track for a level 1 and Jackie's going to deliver a level 2, and Maureen is going to do also another level 2. So we look and we hold one another accountable in setting and managing those goals. Time management comes into play because everything we do, as we see a green light on the screen today, we learn to speak within that and manage time. And then also that in learning to speak, we also learn to determine what our purpose is. What is the purpose in speaking? Let's be really clear so that we take that to the workplace. And when we go to present, we're saying, okay, who am I speaking to? Because we've got to know our audience. What's the size of the audience? What do they need to know? And why am I presenting this? What information's in and which is out? And so we bring a huge value, and it's great to even dissect the Toastmasters program and think about the transferable skills and knowledge. Anybody here in our paradigm shift game, anybody want to add a transferable skill in the chat that you are burning to share that I haven't mentioned that you think is critical? Self-confidence, yes. Project management, yes, absolutely. Some of that, yep. And you know what? You can't buy self-confidence. Initiatives, yes. Taking initiative, employee feedback, yes. The feedback, for sure. That feedback when you're working with people. And yes, I agree. We build emotional intelligence when we work together, and we work on that mentoring skills. We work on the positivity if we've got a great environment. So all of those networking skills, I agree. Working the room and networking is amazing. So that's certainly one of the transferable skills that I gained when I was in Toastmasters and didn't realize it until somebody said, oh, I saw you over there working the room. And I went, what? I worked the room? And then I realized, yes, that's what I love to do, is go and talk to people. Having hard conversations for sure is another one. And this is a great one to talk about for transferable skills, because people often will step back when they're subject matter experts and they have an opportunity for a promotion, and they'll step back going, oh, I don't want to supervise people because then I have to manage performance. But we can actually learn how to do that in Toastmasters. I want to spend just a short time talking about expectations from Toastmasters as well as the organization, what we need. So I'm very upfront with the corporation in terms of what we need from them at the very beginning when I start to meet with them. And this can be whether you're resetting a corporate club or a corporate program that hasn't been working and you want to start over and reset it, or you're starting from scratch. Right at the very beginning, you want to talk about the time during work hours. You want to talk about the money. You want to talk about meeting space and recognition that could happen and how we're going to partner. We want to also find out who they want to offer the program to. Some corporations will say anybody in the organization. Others will say, oh, we want to send our project managers. We want to send our IT department. They have specific targets. I have a conversation with them when they have that mindset, and I encourage them to open it up, but it's their program and I let them run with it. But I ensure to tell them that they must have 25 enrollees in this program at all times for it to be effective. And so sometimes that information changes their paradigm. I also talk to them of how they're going to promote it to their current employees as well as new employees, so that they understand that they are responsible for filling the class, not us. They are the ones that are sending and ensuring that people are enrolled in the program. And for us, one of the things that I've learned when I go to talk to a corporation about the Toastmasters program, I cannot want it more than they do. I, as a Toastmaster, cannot want this program in their corporation more than they do. Why is that? Why do you think that's important?
It won't remain in place if one person is really passionate and no one else is, especially no one in charge. I've seen clubs disappear after a year.
Yep. And if I want it more than them, I'm going to say, oh, I'll do that. And oh, Toastmasters will do that. And oh, we'll make it happen. No, it's a partnership, and that's a paradigm shift. They need to be engaged. They need to come to the table. And if they don't come to the table, it's not going to work, because we can't drag them to the table. They're going, we didn't sign on for that. So the corporation has to sign on with the corporate Toastmasters. It has to be at that level. Okay. So we need to ensure that we don't want it more than they want it. A couple of other things. I talked to them about getting it in their training calendar and promoting this in some way to brand new employees. If they have new employee orientation, do they make sure that they know what training is available and how they access it? They need to think about how they're going to fund it. Does it come from the branches? Does it come centrally? And I have conversation with them because they, in all likeliness, already have processes in place. I talked to them about integrating it into their employee performance review plan, or whatever they call it. And the other thing that is really important is to discuss. Oh, I'm just seeing, my mind just made a flip, because here I've got Virginia saying my corporate club is 13 years young and grew during COVID as they opened it up to other locations. Yes. So in some cases, they need to decide, these are decisions. Is it hybrid? Is it in person or online? So I've just been involved with chartering a club in a university that's a corporate club, and they're online. 5 campuses have come together. They need to answer a lot of tough questions for themselves. And they also have to decide, the corporation has to decide, how long are you wanting to support an employee in the Toastmasters program? So have some general policy that, so there's consistency, as well as how are you going to support them? Is that with time and money, or reimbursement upon certain completions? We have to help them with that a certain amount. And then how would they recognize their employees? So there's a lot of things that we need to talk to them about and help them get in place so that they can be effective and efficient in providing the Toastmasters program. So I'm going to stop there, because I know we're about, my red is up, and I know that gave me 5 more minutes to keep going. So I want to open for Q&A, because while I could talk generally for a long time, I want to answer any specific questions that you might have at this point in time from the paradigm shift game. Any questions?
Hi, Pat. And this is District 119, Lisa.
Yes.
Hi, I have a question about the corporate club. Initially, when we approached them for the very first meeting, and the problem is most of them are so busy, and the demo meeting, they will push it off 2 months after. And then when that time happened, coming closer, they will have other things happening. So for this reason, so how do you think we should handle that?
I'm always, when I go in to talk, first of all, I use Rick Furbush's demo information session meeting. I need 2 or 3 people maximum. I do not take a large team in. And I want them to experience the Toastmaster program. We're not there to show off. I need a Toastmaster, I need a speaker, and that's it. I have them do the evaluations. I have them do table topics, and I want them to experience it. I'm also very clear when I'm going in to do an information session, which is what I call them, that who is coming. Are they bringing their supervisors so their supervisors can send their employees, or are they inviting all of their employees that are going to come to find out about it? My preference, I have a bias, but I would rather have all the supervisors there than a few employees that might be interested because they've heard of it before, or looking at, because often they hold it during a lunch hour, and I want to have it during a work hour time. And I want the supervisors, managers there so they can say, oh, I've got employees that I could send to this. But that's my bias. The first conversation I have with the corporation, I want to have an information meeting within 2 weeks' time. I'm asking for 1 to 2 weeks. I basically say we've got a team that can come, we've got a space, and I use it like I'm booking an appointment for a meeting in my work calendar. So we've got a space on Thursday at from 2 till 3. Will that work? I give them a couple of alternatives. And basically, if they start putting me off, I send them a note, just like I did just recently with a corporation that has been sliding. And I basically wrote them and said, we're now entering the 3rd quarter of the year, and we're scheduling our information sessions. Is this going to be the quarter that will work for you and your people, or shall we schedule you later? I don't try to keep them hanging on. I want to put them over in a category that I don't want it more than they do. They have to want it. So I ask them to do it soon. And when they start pushing it, I go, okay, so when will this work? Because I'm scheduling people just as you're scheduling people. So let's put a date on the calendar.
Right. Great. I have another question, but I don't want to hold it, everyone,
But go ahead, unless somebody raises their hand. Yeah, go ahead.
This is regarding to the corporate clubs that died during 2020, the pandemics. And now the world headquarters has this incentive so that bring them back. Now we have these corporate clubs. They most of the scenario, it is the Toastmasters want to bring it back. Now the Toastmasters work their way, get the funds from the CEO, everything is set, but the Toastmasters get so busy during the work days, and it's just kept putting off and off and off. And now they suggest that we're going to back to in the summer, maybe when everybody has some little bit of time. So what do you suggestion to handle that?
Well, time and money are always the excuses of everything in our culture, right? It's always time and money. I don't have the time, or I don't have the money. And so those are acceptable excuses from in the mainstream, in my experience. And I just go, oh, it's just that it's not a priority. Because if your child's health depended on it, you'd be there. You'd find the time, you'd find the money. So it's just not a priority. And I'm not negating it, but my comment is that when it's ready to go, look at if they've folded during COVID, some of the times you can go back and you can reset this in the corporate world and have the corporation put it in motion, not the Toastmasters. Toastmaster members shouldn't be running the program. The Toastmaster members should be attending the program as participants. And so that makes a big difference in my opinion. So if the corporation says we're offering the program now as part of our training, then it happens. It doesn't matter if Toastmaster A, B, and C aren't ready to go. We'll recruit a brand new Toastmasters for the money we've got. The corporation's paying and playing, then I wouldn't give the existing Toastmasters that power.
Got it.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Jerry, I see your hand up.
Yes, Pat, good morning. Jerry Evans
Hi.
from District 30 in Chicagoland area. What
Yes.
do you see from your perspective is the biggest challenge corporate clubs are facing today?
Well, I think the same as they always have. I think the greatest challenge for the Toastmasters program in a corporate environment is isolation, lack of training, and lack of engagement outside of a club environment or that program environment, their small little world. How many of us would still be in Toastmasters if we didn't learn that there was an area or a division or a district to get involved in? I mean, I would have been bored to tears after 2 years in my home club. I'm sorry, but that wasn't big enough for me to play in. I felt like I was not the best speaker, but I felt like I was pretty much the best evaluator in my club already after 2 years. So I needed more challenge. And there was nobody there that I felt would be a good mentor. In other words, I wasn't scared in my club anymore. And when you're not scared in your club, you've outgrown it. You have to go to a new club, because if you're not outside your comfort zone, you're just hanging out, having a good time, thinking, oh, I'll mentor everybody and I'll be the star. No, get out where you're scared, and that's where you're going to learn stuff. That's where possibility lives, outside your comfort zone. And so keep changing, keep finding a club where you're scared and you're learning. So I think they die because people get comfortable. I think they also start slipping and sliding, and they stop doing presentations because they're not held accountable. So attendance, that's fixed if we have accountability with the corporation for attendance. Performance and involvement and showing up becomes a non-issue if we have the corporation hold them accountable for participating, because they're being paid to go and given time. Isolation changes because if you have an area director that actually understands how the corporate program's working, they're going to be involved in helping them be successful. And I tell corporate that going to training is mandatory. If you're going to be a leader, you have to go to leadership training. And so I tell them that it's mandatory, that if they don't want to be a leader, that's fine. Don't be on the executive. But if you're on the executive, you have to go to training. And that's going to be outside of work hours, which again is a challenge. But if you're a leader, that's what you do. You do what it takes to be the leader. And so I think that we have to look at those, and those are always going to be the challenges in the corporate environment, in my opinion. Just getting them into the bigger world. Tell them that they could be the world champion if they want to. They could sit on an international board if they want. They can practice at and play at whatever level they want in this organization. They can play on the world stage if they want. But most of them don't even know it exists. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. I got on a bit of a rampage. Angela. Oh, I've got an unstable connection. It says, Angela, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Pat. Thank you
Can
so
you hear me?
much. I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
One of the things that I've heard you speak before, and it has helped tremendously to also have your book to follow. So can you also let everyone know your book? And we used your guidelines to take a club that was struggling last year to President's Distinguished with 23 members. So we're a success for following your guidance and your curriculum and your adjustments for technology, not just the technology, but the verbiage and the transferable skills. So yeehaw, but please let everyone know that your book is out there to refer back to when you're not in our pocket to help us.
Well, thank you, Angela. Yes, I do have a book that I wrote with Toastmasters International approval. I wrote it in 2018, and they have it in the store at Toastmasters. It's entitled A Handbook for Building and Sustaining Toastmasters Programs in Corporations. And it is currently available in the store, and I believe it's $16.95 available US. So thanks for the plug, Angela. When is book 2 coming? Well, I've had discussions with Toastmasters about this a long time because I wanted to turn this into a document where people could use it. When I first wrote this book, my intention was that it would be very high level and help people make their own way and interpret it and fit it to their specific environment. And I soon discovered that that didn't always translate well. So I wanted to turn it into more like a workbook. And I've had conversations with Toastmasters because this is only sold through Toastmasters and myself. But we haven't agreed that that is going to happen. It's one of those things. They're busy and overwhelmed with other things, so that's on hold. Lee, I see you've got your hand up, and then we're at red, and that means I've got 2 minutes left. So, Lee.
So, Pat, a couple things came to mind as you were talking, and I didn't know if you want to comment on them. One of the things that I have had success with corporate clubs is identifying a champion at that company to be the champion for Toastmasters to the executives of the company, etc., as well as to the employees. Number 2 is a challenge is sometimes in corporations when things get very busy, Toastmasters members will not come to meetings as frequently because they don't want to jeopardize their jobs. A third challenge I've recently faced is that Toastmasters helps individuals to the point that they get promoted and all of a sudden they're very busy and Toastmasters no longer fits into their schedule. Feedback, comments about any of that?
Well, first of all, I find if you have an agreement between the employee and the employer, that does away with the meeting attendance issue. Because, for example, I said to my employees, you must attend 80% of the meetings. You must deliver 3 presentations or 2 presentations that depended on my employees within 6 months. And you must do at least 6 other meeting roles. And I want attendance, 80% attendance. If you're on the executive, I want you to attend 90% of the executive meetings of that group. So by being the employer and demanding attendance, then I can't say, hey, I need you to go off to this meeting, because then the employee can say, and we have an agreement that I attend 80% of my Toastmasters training. So it's that, so that addresses that. I forget what the first one was that you said. Can you?
A champion.
Oh, champion. Yes, they are great if you can get them. The difficulty is that they often disappear, and there's not always continuity. Sometimes they are nice to have if you can get them. It's like that. It's nice to have a good car if you can get it. Yeah. Or a nice croissant if you can get it. Nice to have. Yeah, so I wouldn't be throwing them back if I had a good sponsor, but they're not always the be all end all. You want somebody though that you're going to report to, and sometimes if you have a sponsor, it helps in addition to that HR or training department person to have a sponsor that will keep you. If they're that type of person and they have a buy-in with the Toastmasters program, they'll keep you visible in the corporation. Yeah.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
Mallory.
We're actually 3 minutes over time. I really appreciate Pat being here and sharing this wisdom, and thank you for sharing your book. Can you put it in the chat if you don't mind? For those who have additional questions, please place them in the chat. Pat, thank you so much. This has been awesome. For folks visiting from outside of District 58, thank you for joining us this morning from wherever you may be in the world. Really appreciate your time. And to District 58, you are outstanding. Thank you for being here.